So welcome to April's La Hora. I'm here with Valentina Palacios, Research Fellow in the Deed Research Lab. And wonderful to see new faces and returning faces. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for joining us in this space of sharing and learning and all things related to the artisan sector, design, craft, social impact. So when we don't have a special guest, you are all our special guests. And the way we go about it is, and we still have a nice number of people to do a round of sharing in the space if you brought a thing with you. And the thing can be a question that drove you to join today's La Hora. Maybe you have a in-progress idea, design challenge that you want to share with us for feedback. Perhaps you're looking for specific resources. So we'll do a round. I'll take notes, make note of what you're bringing to today's space, and then we'll go around again and focus the conversation on what you all are suggesting as the agenda for today's hora. Does that sound good to everyone? Okay. So Medavi and I had already started our conversation. So perhaps Medavi, I'll put you on the spot and ask you to reshare with everyone what you had said was your kind of main question that you're exploring right now.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. My question was if in an indigenous brand that's coming from India is looking to create a market in West based on the artisanal economy, where should we be looking at?
Okay, thank you, Medavi.
Do you want me to elaborate a little bit more on it?
Maybe when it's your turn, we'll do a round first of everyone sharing their thing, if they have one, and then we'll return to you, and then you can elaborate. Does that sound good?
Definitely.
Okay, fantastic. Next on my screen, I see Farzana.
I don't have a thing today. I'm here to listen and learn, and maybe ask some questions later on.
Okay, great. Thanks for coming. Lashana, do you have a thing?
I suppose my thing would be if anyone has direct connections with artisans for me to study. I'm primarily studying the global supply chain and how artisans are accessing the global markets. So if you have any direct artisans that you know of, it would be great, very helpful. And part of my research is just artisans in general, and part of them are artisans of African descent, or African Americans, or so I'm doing both, studying both.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Kavya, do you have a thing you want to share?
I'll just introduce myself, I guess, because it's the first time I'm here. I'm Kavya. I'm an industrial designer, and I think what interests me is how designers and craftsmen could work together to create products for modern context and sort of establish a sort of equal partnership between both of them, and trying to understand how it is happening currently. So with this session, I think I'm just here to get an idea as to how this whole program works and what sort of conversations foster over here. Yeah.
Okay.
See if I have any questions after that.
Thank you for finding us and for being here.
Yes. Thank you, Farzana.
Yeah. Great. Jackie, do you have a thing today?
Yes, thanks. Great to be here again. It's been a little while. And yeah, of course, I know Farzana is going to be getting everybody on board. She's such a fabulous networker. So yes, where I'm at the moment, for those who don't know, I've been working in Bangladesh since 1989 with various weavers and artisans. I'm a textile designer, and now that I'm here in the US, I've been working on a collection of fabrics handwovens to create a resource for fashion designers to be able to sustainably and ethically source their fabrics directly from hand weavers. The yarns I'm using are all recycled yarns as well. I've found that there's a lot of interest in it, but there has definitely been some hesitancy to stepping into the process. So as a result, over the last few months, I've been working out a training course that I'm putting forward. Now I'm actually going to start the pilot next week that would really equip designers with the skills and the understanding and the confidence to be able to step into artisanal production, ethical artisanal production. So with that context going forward, I just really appreciate anybody in the mix here, that if you were to kind of engage in such a course, what kind of things would you find really helpful and beneficial to encourage you to really engage with the handmade?
Sounds exciting. Thank you, Jackie. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you.
Fernanda, do you have a thing?
Hey,
Hi.
no, I just came here to listen and to learn. I went to university with Valentina. I just saw in Instagram, so I just want to see what it's about.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Shambhavi, Polo?
Oh, hello.
Hi.
I'm just here to be a part of this conversation and see all the insightful topics we touch on. So I'm just here to soak up all of that.
Okay, thanks for joining us. Christian?
Hi, this is Chris. I'm an economist. I'm doing research about grassroots innovators and how can we open up spaces for them in different levels, not only in terms of recognize their contribution, make them visible, but even if we can try to involve them into the business models of some approaches. I'm currently writing a document about how to make explicit that connection between epistemic justice. That is a concept that I recently start to play with, and how can we make that exposure of grassroots innovation in a more just way without extraction. That's my current question. How can we open up, share those knowledge without extract? That seems not only a question but a dilemma. I don't know if that's solvable, but I came here maybe 1 or 2 months ago, and the conversation is very interesting. So I'm here just to learn, and if I can maybe contribute. Thank you for opening up this space.
Wonderful. Thanks for coming. Really interesting questions that you're asking. And Anshu, do you have a thing?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
So I'm here because how should I say it? I'm based out of Bangalore in India. I mean, I've had a design label for many years, but I also work very closely with craft communities to develop, to kind of support design in their work, in the sense, because we're quite a textile rich country. The embroideries are beautiful, but sometimes, I mean, pattern making skills are minimal, or, things like that. So I work very closely to enable them to put out their own collections. So it's, yeah. And I'm trying to see, and I find that, there are abilities of I can see where the gaps are and where the skill sets are, which are amazing. And a lot of the women that I work with in embroidery are especially very, very close to my heart. So I'm just trying to see how to expand this possibility. So if there are people looking for this kind of, linkage or some kind of support, how can I build a platform to do this so that we can do more of this kind of work, and also in the realm of expressive embroidery, artistic textiles, because the minimum wage, I mean, a lot of these artisans get a minimum labor wage, which is really, it's ridiculous. So how do we up this kind of thing so we can, work in a very collaborative, open kind of way with the craft communities? Yeah.
Yes, we agree. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anshu. Thanks for being here and for contributing that. Valentina, do you have a thing?
So I don't necessarily have a thing, but I have been working in like two things. One that is a financial inclusion, and especially for immigrants. But considering that I work with displaced communities in Colombia, I was wondering like what are the responsibilities of government at a national level and an international level to provide financial inclusion opportunities to communities like artisans communities and indigenous communities in a specific. So yeah, that was my thing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Valentina. And I'll share a thing I've been thinking about all week. On Monday, there was an event here at Parsons. I know some of you were there. It was a book talk by our colleague Otto von Busch, who just published The Corruption of Co-Design, Political and Social Conflicts in Participatory Design Thinking. In a recent article I co-authored with Valentina, who's here, and Valentina Frias, who just joined, we actually critique co-design and how designers claim that co-design is a way to create ethics and equity. But in this talk, in this event, Sloan Leo, who has a studio called Flock Studio, and they self-describe themselves as a community designer, encouraged us to consider how micro communities are the place where designers can really make an impact. And I've been thinking about it since, because one of our hypotheses in the Deed Lab that we haven't really proven, right? We haven't yet done enough research to say, yes, this is true, is that when artisan initiatives or businesses or brands grow through investors or through a desire to create greater profit, or perhaps assuming that they can create greater impact, that's where the ethical model breaks. So I've been thinking a lot about micro communities and the scale of impact, and I'm excited that there are several of you here who are working on actual projects, and we can talk about, the scale of the communities within which you work. Okay, well, we have a lot there that we can go around and discuss. So maybe Medhavi, I'll invite you to share a little bit more. You're speaking from an experience with an indigenous brand in India, looking to create a market in the West, and where should you be looking? And you wanted to maybe expand a bit on the work that you're doing there.
Yes. Should I give you a little background about my brand?
Sure.
Okay. My experience with artisanal. So I came across these artisans from this remote village in Basoli, and they had these beautiful, beautiful paintings. And when I asked them whether you are able to sell it or not, you must be making very well out of this. And they told me that in spite of having 8 to 10 years of expertise in this particular field, they are not able to get enough out of it, and they're thinking of leaving it. So that was a pain that stuck with me, and I was determined to contribute towards their sustainable livelihood. And I started a project in my college, and my teachers supported it. my college, I'm from Delhi University, Sri Ram College of Commerce. So my college bought those paintings, but unfortunately it was the time of COVID and everyone was forced to go back homes. And that project was, it just was put to hold. In spite of that, I was able to meet the artisans where I went to the village. I saw their whole work process, how the colors are made, how they make the paper and everything. So, but one thing that I understood that time was I have to make the art functional in order to make sustainable livelihood for them, because so that they can continue with their art form. And that's where I thought I should combine art with textile. Now, this is not a new concept, but this is where I'm working on, and my startup has been incubated in one of the premium institutes called IIM Bangalore. And but right now I'm just raking my brains as to if I have to create a supply chain where these artisans, where I'm including weavers and artisans, if I have to increase the value for the products that they are making, I have to sell it to the places where they are actually appreciated. So right now I lack a little bit of understanding as to how can I go about exploring the Western markets. And that's why I stand in front of you right now.
Well, thank you, Madhavi. I mean, we have several people on the call who are actively working on models such as the one you're describing. I can drop into the chat a bunch of resources. There's a UNESCO publication called When Designers Meet Artisans that has I think a helpful introduction of ways of working between designers and artisans. And I'll also drop in a link to the publications that we've done in the Deed Lab, which are more on the critical front. Anthropologists discourage us trying to commercialize indigenous and other cultural heritage products because of the long-term negative implications that may have on issues around poverty alleviation, on cultural preservation, those kinds of matters. But yeah, I welcome, so I'll drop those in the chat and welcome if anybody else wants to chime in. I won't put you on the spot, but Jackie shared, reminded us that she's been working in Bangladesh since 1989. So maybe a lot of learning there. Anshu working on artisan initiated collections sounds also really interesting. Anybody want to share with Madhavi?
Yeah, just to say, Madhavi, just great, well done. One of the things I'm really appreciative of as you present is that you really do want to get the sales end sorted out before you start jumping in to engage with people that are basically have their hopes raised already. They have their hopes raised. And at the bottom of everything that we do is relationship and honoring the relationships that we go into with artisanal communities, and knowing that whether we intend it or not, hope is raised. And for you to actually be intentional about sorting out the market end, rather than jumping in with the obviously very strong feelings of altruism that many of us come with. They're important, but the reality is that there has to be good market investigation at the other end before anything really kicks off. So really, thank you very much for recognizing that and moving in that way already. Yeah.
It actually helps me a lot when you put a comment out like that, because I know these artisans, they have people come to them, they talk, they give them hope. They know, okay, now this is where we might feel a difference in our situation. They might help us with our income and everything, provide some stability, but at the end of the day, those are false promises, and it makes harder for the other person who actually wants to work with them to approach and establish a base for trust. So yeah.
Thank you, Jackie. Any other suggestions for Madhavi? Madhavi, I put a bunch of links in the chat.
Thank you so much.
Explore on your own time, and I know you've come across the study group we did with 200 million artisans. And then once we post all of our videos from Laura, there's a lot also in these spaces that you can draw from.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming. Maybe a good segue to Lashana's thing. Lashana is looking for direct connections with artisans for her to study, and maybe Lashana, you can share a little bit more of what you're hoping to learn with artisans.
So what I'm really hoping is very much along the lines of what Madhavi shared. I am hoping to learn from artisans who have accessed the markets and who are comfortable accessing the global markets. And I would like to study that to help other artisans, with the same systems. If there is a system, from what I've learned thus far, it's fragmented and not well established. And so my goal is to write it down and have usable information for artisans around the world. And I said, of African descent, but really, wherever the artisans are, I would just like to study them and just help more people is ultimately my goal. More artisans is my ultimate goal. And artisans as well as buyers, right? Not just the artisans. I want the buyers to be comfortable accessing the artisans and, creating that whole community. So that's my goal with my research. I'm a student at North Carolina State University in their College of Design, and I'm working on my doctorate. That is who I am. So I would love to talk with Anshu and Jackie and Madhavi, anyone that, has access to these artisans, just so that I can study and write it down and hopefully make it usable for other artisans.
Lashana, that's absolutely fabulous. It's really just so needed to create these resources for artisans on the ground. I'm curious, are you looking specifically for connections with artisans who are independently working with other markets, or those who are within a group that are kind of equipped by a trader or a business per se to actually access?
So ideally the independents, I would like to work with the independents just so that they can sustain themselves. What I'm finding is they may be independent and still work with groups. Like, in order to sustain themselves, they have to do both. So I say that independence, but at the same time, so many of them, from what I've read and what I know, they have to be parts of these groups just to sustain themselves. So I would say both, but ideally the independents. Because I also know that many of them work with NGOs. And so, that's a network that already exists for them, but not everyone has that access. And there are only so many NGOs that can work with them. So that is where I am.
Yeah, I know, Farzana, too. Between us, we'd have a number of networks in Bangladesh, I'm sure, that we could help out with. If you felt that was an area that you wanted to move into, do feel free to reach out.
I will connect with you directly. Thank you. I would like to study. I just looked at it on the map because I also would ideally like to visit, and just, if that's even possible, to connect with the artisans. So thank you. Yes, I will reach out to you both. I appreciate that very much.
Hi, how are you?
Valentina.
I'm Valentina. I work here in Colombia with an NGO that is called Agdi Boca. And we have some projects around communities, but also we have done some projects with artisanal communities. So if you want to travel, if you are also able to travel to Colombia to see like how did that can work, you can also contact me if you want. Because I've been doing a research around other communities that are not working with the NGOs. And so it will be a cool bridge to have.
I'd appreciate that very much, and I will reach out to you in just a moment. Thank you.
Thank you
Actually,
so
you can-
much, Valentina. Go ahead, Anshu.
I was going to say that I'm part of this network called Creative Dignity, based out of India. And I think it's if you like, you can actually join. I mean, normally people from the country are there, but everyone's welcome. And you could sort of connect with a lot of different people. And of course, feel free to reach out to me. And this is, I mean, it sounds very similar to our situation where we have artisans connected with NGOs, and then we have independents. And then across the country, there are states where people have more of an entrepreneurial spirit. So they are willing to, you know, build their own businesses. And there are others where they would like, you know, a lot of hand-holding and support. So it really is quite a mixed landscape. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anshu. I will continue reaching out to you as well. Thank you. And thank you for your email.
I'm not sure if this is gonna help, Lashana, but I'm happy to share. I did this research on the artisan, like looking at the system and what are those enablers, inhibitors, and stuff. So I'm happy to like walk through the, through my research as well, and in case that helps, that would be fun.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Paula.
Okay, a lot there. Wonderful. Thank you all for being so generous and open to connect and to share. So let's see, Kavya had to go. But I do want to highlight that Kavya's question about designers and craftsmen working together towards equal partnership is something that we're really always excited to consider and think about, and yeah, think about those relationships of power. How do we define equitable, ethical? Who gets to define what that means? So yeah, we don't have to stay on that, but I wanted to make sure that it was mentioned in the space. Jackie, you're next on my list. I know that you want feedback or thoughts on the training course, but I just want to say I'm really excited about your initiative to create a resource for fashion designers who want to ethically source from weavers. And I wanted to mention, we had, I taught a course a few years ago called Artisan Futures in partnership with Mercado Global. And one of the student projects, one of the student teams was suggesting a library of textiles that could be used by students across Parsons, product design, interior design, fashion design, and textile design as a way to source. So if that may be of interest to you, happy to connect on that particular idea. We were thinking about, the students were proposing that it could be part of the materials library that we have at Parsons. There's a heavy emphasis now on healthy materials. So I'm curious to know also how far you're going with issues of sustainability and ethics in terms of the raw materials that are incorporated into these textiles. But I'll turn it back to you in case you want to expand on that, or if you want to again mention the training course. We have a few people who arrived since you mentioned that, so if you want to again ask us for that input.
Great, thank you so much, Cynthia. It's such a dynamic space that we have here to be able to connect on these issues, because you know we're all on the same page, and it's not often you get a band of us together that can really thrash these things out. So yes, for myself, just to recap for those who've joined, I'm in the throes of creating a pilot course that is looking to help designers gain the skills and the confidence and the understanding, as much as anything else, of what it takes to engage with artisanal production, ethical artisanal production. And so the reason I've got getting into that is really to create this bridge, because last year was the first year we could get out and do trade fairs again. And I hit it quite hard with 5 trade fairs to really bring the fabrics into the designers' hands so they could start feeling them, talking about them. And I've found that there is a real lack of knowledge of actual fabric construction amongst many fashion designers, unfortunately, about how to even go about creating a hand-woven fabric or woven fabric. And I was a bit shocked because I thought designers would be all over it. Wow, we can get to design our own fabrics. But that hasn't been the case. And so what I've realized is that for this first turn of the wheel, this first iteration of getting the designers to recognize not only that making a stripe and a plaid pattern is actually quite simple. You don't need to know how to set up a loom. You don't need to know all of these different intricacies in order to do it. But the impact of designers actually stretching, I think I want to call it more of a continuing professional development course than anything else. You know, it's like raising awareness of this amazing way of sourcing fabric, that the impact is just exponential. The yarns that I'm using at the moment are primarily from cyclo-recycled fibers. They're a company in Bangladesh that contract with the garment manufacturers, and you know, the tonnage of fabric that goes through, the wastage that is there. They collect that wastage, break it down into fiber, spin it into new yarn, and we hand weave with it. And so it means that that yarn is zero waste. There's zero new dye involved because, you know, green fabric becomes green yarn. And yeah, we hand weave with it, which is practically zero carbon. And we're weaving to order. So it's, you know, it just takes 150 yards to kick in a loom. And so within that, you're able to weave 50 yards of 3 different weft combinations through. So for small to medium-sized designers, it's a perfect opportunity to source ethically, truly sustainable fabrics. And it's an option that I really believe we need to bring into more of a mainstream accessibility, so that the absolute, the awful state of the handloom industry in Bangladesh can actually start to be addressed at a time in which the market is really ready for this kind of sustainable solution in the fashion and textile industry. And what we see as a result of that, when handloom communities can actually start being healthy again, there are all kinds of benefits that start to rack up within those areas. Probably the most compelling one for me is the stability that starts to happen in communities again, because, you know, what's been happening over and over is that weavers have to head off to the village, off to the cities. They earn money there. The families are fractured. Less money goes home. And families become very, very vulnerable, especially in the rural areas, to trafficking in Bangladesh. It's a huge supply of human trafficking, and mostly from the rural areas. And when these communities can be stabilized and become healthy, that is reduced dramatically. Sorry, that's a really big hobby horse. And so you can see why I'm wanting to get more and more people involved in this, because the industry is big enough to cope with that scalability. The the resources are there, we can produce a lot of hand-woven fabric. So yeah.
Thank you. Wow, that's really amazing. We think about the quantity of potential social impact goals that you just described there. It's extremely moving. So thank you so much for sharing. Sonia shared something in the chat, reminds her of Kaloom as a resource. Do you know Kaloom?
Ah, yes, Kaloom. I've been following them. I'm not connected with any of them, but yes, definitely. Fabulous team.
Valentina just shared something else. I'd be happy to, if it would be useful to you, maybe have a little focus group meeting where we invite the directors of our related programs here at Parsons, who could maybe share with you, one, how do we currently teach our students, the next generation of rising designers? How do we teach them, or do we not? Or what resource would be useful to us, or how could we partner with you in doing this? Where are you based, Jackie?
In Central Illinois.
Oh, okay. Maybe we can have you teach an online elective or something of that sort here.
Yeah.
So if you want to be in touch
That would
about
be
that,
exciting. Yeah, thank you.
feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
Any other reactions from people here? What kind of content would you, Farzana?
Hi, Jackie. Good to see you. Yeah, as usual, you're doing great stuff. I just have one question regarding the fibers that you're talking about. Those are, as what I understand, are leftovers or extra stock from the ready-made garment industry.
They're the offcuts,
Offcuts.
like the wastage from the pattern cutting.
Okay. And are those categorized according to the material content? Cotton, synthetic, polyester.
The yarn that they create is essentially about 70-75% recycled cotton and the balance recycled poly. Obviously when the cotton goes through the mechanical breakdown process, the fibers get so short. They need the poly for that bit of strength to get in there. So yeah. It's not been feasible yet, I don't think, to do 100% recycled cotton. If it was going 100% cotton, would need, I think they said between 2 to 5% virgin cotton would have to be involved to give it the strength. But that was the last time I spoke with them. Things develop all the time, who knows?
Yeah, because mixing synthetic and cotton and natural material, of course, creates a whole set of new problems. And then yeah, being not biodegradable and all. So yeah, I don't know. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, for all of us in this space, we need to kind of choose our lane. And, choose, taking up the waste and closing the loop, taking that fabric back into garment production just seems to me, that's kind of where I'm buzzing.
No.
Yeah.
Get it.
Yeah.
Anshu has put in the chat that she'd be happy to connect, and that she can also connect you to Kaloom Studio if you would be interested.
Anshu, thank you so much. Great. I will. Let me send you my email as well.
If you scroll up in the chat, Anshu had shared her email with Lashana, so it's in there if you want to.
Oh, fabulous. Great. I'm seeing it now.
Jackie, can I ask you something? This is so exciting, the work you're doing. I'm also trying to understand, it must have been quite a task to put things together at the back end, because in India, at least, I can say that weavers are spread across different villages, and remotely when we work or we try to support, it's complicated, or the shipping, the quality checks. So how is the back end designed for what you're doing? I would like to.
Fabulous. Great question. I have to say, it's been an incredible privilege that the vast majority of my working life has been in Bangladesh. And so I have an incredible network of very well established and very trustworthy connections in all of these aspects in terms of the actual weaving of the fabrics, communication between weavers and exporters, all of these things. I certainly would not recommend somebody to just walk in and start trying to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not possible. I mean,
yeah, it's taken a long time. And not that I set out necessarily to do this, but this has been the path that's opened up for me, and I'm very, very thankful for it. Yeah.
And Jackie, before we move along, can you share how you define ethical? Where you are in that? What do you mean when you say ethical?
When I say ethical,
yeah.
I very much am talking about people first. It is because what I've seen over the years is that when people are equipped with safe and respectful work, by respectful I mean is properly properly rewarded, they are given space and health in which to work well, the knock-on effects that start happening once you have that kind of stability in a family, in a community, many other things start to be taken care of just as a matter of course. People making choices. I mean, not everybody, makes the best ethical choices in terms of consumption habits and, waste and all of those things. None of us do. But when you are in a position that you have stability in your income, the choices, it's access to choice then. It's access to opportunity that affords people the option to move out of the circumstances of poverty and the many calls upon them to simply survive, rather than having opportunities and options to move out of that and be able to contribute into their own families, into the wider culture, wider society. So yeah, in short, my definition is people first. And yeah, just looking after people the way that we'd like to be looked after in our work.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Thank you, everybody. This is really encouraging. Thank you.
Christian, do you want to share more about your research? I'm so curious about if you want to share a bit, especially on the tail of that definition of ethical, epistemic justice and grassroots innovation. In what context are you? What place in the world are you studying?
I started this research when I was working with UNDP in Colombia. I worked with them until 1 year ago, but definitely they have like an interest to open up the space of development projects for grassroots innovators. However, their mindset is very pro-market. Literally, they just want to open up the value chain for these kind of approaches without taking care about how the knowledge, the design, and how the community is managing their own knowledge assets, if you want to call it. They just go there and say, okay, there's a market opportunity, let's sell it. And sometimes you need to explain the consequences, what is going to happen behind each one of the steps of this value chain. So, sorry, my language is from an economist. So there is also distinction between what you are mostly researching, because I understood that you're working with artisan and a lot of crafts. But when we're talking about grassroots innovation, is not necessarily well designed in terms of beauty, but some small fixes that the people are doing by themselves in order to improve their own life. That can be a new machine to make the easy recollection of the coffee for the farmer. That's some specific that could be considered gadgets that people have created by themselves to improve their own lives. And most of the time, this grassroots innovation, when it's created, they are not necessarily considered themselves as an innovator. They're solving a problem and they just continue with their lives. And these kind of small fixes when you combine them, can have a great impact in the community. So what I'm currently doing is just doing a small research by my own, in which to make explicit that distinction between the traditional innovation. The people tend to confuse innovation, technology, design, and creativity. So there is a huge confusion from people that is not working in these topics. And where you are talking with policymakers or decision makers, they are just putting technology, design, innovation in the same mental bag, and they treat them in the same way. So I want to make explicit that thing for that kind of audience, and also make explicit that grassroots innovators or grassroots innovation is different to frugal innovation and informal innovation, because frugal is related with the cost. So people just assume that's going to talk with the people and extract, I think there's a very small red line between low cost innovation and literally extract innovation. So frugal innovation, I'm defining it more in terms of low cost, that could be like an origin from even a corporate environment. And grassroots is from the people to the people. And the informal innovation, also there is a confusion within that ecosystem of policymakers, in which nowadays there are some people that are selling formal processes to do innovation. So what I'm saying is that sometimes innovation happens without a formal process. So there's some people with some needs and they just go and try and do great stuff by themselves. Those are the main things that I'm working on. And now I'm trying to connect this with the epistemic justice, because I think when we are talking about craft, you have a specific, for instance, fabrics, but sometimes the knowledge from the community or indigenous communities also is literally a different way of seeing the world. And that different way of seeing implies a different way of relate within other people and with the territory and with the objects. And what some people is expecting is just a new checklist of framework in which they can include in the contracts, and it's not something as light like that. I'm not sure if my intervention was clear enough, but it's more on a research stage now.
Yeah, we've shared a bunch of things. So Valentina put an article there, asset-based community development. And if you're not aware of the DESIS lab network, definitely several of the labs that I've been familiar with, especially in Colombia, as well as here at Parsons, they're looking at from the community for the community kind of models. And then the final question there, I've been very inspired recently by the work of Colombian Alfredo Gutierrez Borrero and his concept of designers with other names. I love in terms of artisans and not continuing to refer to artisans as different or other than the designers. And could it be extended to innovators with other names, that you don't have to have gone to business school to claim or design school to be an innovator?
Yeah, so, in fact, the word designer or word innovator, when you are going to a small town, at least in Colombia, no one is using that word. And it's very interesting to see, I cannot use those terms here, but there are people that are solving problems by themselves, and they are also recognized by the community. And sometimes they do not want to be tagged or highlighted or be exposed, but they are just there. Or if someone needs something, they can intervene. But there is also a distinction that I'm looking to see if it applies also to this kind of context. I recently heard about the distinction between grassroots and grass tops. That is something that is someone from the community that is already empowered himself or herself as a leader. So the kind of interaction with that grass tops is definitely is different from that.
Wow,
Yes,
very
I-
interesting. Yeah.
Thank you for the references.
That is super interesting what you were saying, because actually we were talking that a lot of times, like when we work with artisans, like often there's like this leader of the artisan community that is the one that speak the language that like the clients speak, and like is the one that like have like that little more power than the rest of the community. I never heard the term like grass top versus grass root. Yeah.
Sorry, but you can go.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is great. I was just like saying that I really like the two terms that you introduced to us, and I personally didn't know about the two differences, but yeah, like very important.
I think that distinction is relatively new, but even in the recently documents that at least UNDP is working about it, they are mixing all the time between frugal innovators, grassroots innovators, informal innovators. So there is a distinction that I think is relevant when you really want to interact with them and work with them, because sometimes you just want to publish a report, or you just want to say, hey, I found this thing that's interesting. But in order to create a process that really change or extend during time, that distinction became relevant. I'm going to look for some of the official documents, but I used to work there, but nowadays I have like a different, complementary perspective. So I'm not completely involved in that now.
Well, thank you, Christian, so much. Really interesting perspective. And yeah, I wasn't aware of some of the terminology you were using. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Anshu, would love to hear more about what you shared briefly of craft communities enabled to put out their own collections. Can you share a bit more about what you're working on?
So we have a small design studio which supports some of the pattern making. I'm a pattern maker myself, so then that's kind of. But essentially, to name a few, I worked with like a lot of Kantha embroidery people in Bengal, and there also you notice that when we have like the ones that came in from Bangladesh, it's kind of in there. I'm just making these like small distinctions specifically to embroidery now, so you can reel me in if I sort of go off. But essentially, so you'll see that even in the embroidery artisans, there will be the ones that are very artistically inclined, and it's kind of in their blood. It's because a lot of the embroideries were used, or even some weaves, to tell stories which are very cultural and specific to the way that people see things. And a lot of these embroideries are done without any outline drawings. They are either mathematical or rhythmic or figurative, and there's just such a vocabulary sitting there. But in some cases, I may have been hired by like a corporate that is looking to engage with sustainable design and said, okay, can you do a collection for us? And then there's a little bit of a framework there, But having done projects where I've been invited by the NGO and projects where it's been commissioned by either like an All India Association of Craft Producers or how to say it? So there's like a lot of different activity going on, right? But essentially what it has enabled me to do is become familiar with Kantha very much. Also in the South, we have this whole Lambani Gypsy Trail, and they have like a host of libraries, you know, of the kind of stitches, and each one of them have so many stories and significance. Sorry, so I'm going to reel back away from the artistic, and then you notice that the women, when they come together to embroider, there is such a sense of community, and there is a sense of having the space to come away from all kinds of issues and just engage. And then I worked with Fulkari in Punjab, and everywhere culturally, the women are so different. It's amazing. But the common thing is this coming together, being happy, getting very little money to do the work that they do, but getting a lot of other joy out of this engagement, you know. So there are some things that you can look at economically, and some takeaways are really more community building in a sense. And I think what I'm arriving at now, after working in different parts of the country over the years, and sometimes just there is a long-term relationship, so that's a whole other, you know, dimension. What I'm beginning to feel is that actually there is a huge space for doing artistic textiles, which come from, and even though that's not because when we talk about it, we think of impacting a huge number of people, but that sort of reduces their work down to a very dull and uninteresting vocabulary compared to what they're capable of. So I'm thinking that maybe it would be quite interesting to look at expressive embroidery textiles done from each of these different communities or groups, and there are many between each one, because in the process of doing that, we've run like a tester in Porgai in Tamil Nadu. I mean, there I have a relationship, so I've kind of worked with them to develop this kind of space where they do beautiful textiles for like, and they are able to then sell it for a much higher financial gain, which is one part of, I mean, one is the economics of it. The other is the creative expression and the sense of dignity and pride that comes back to them. And third is that in doing this, a lot more design emerges from which then we can extrapolate and, you know, put it into smaller products, which they're able to produce in larger numbers. So I'm actually feeling that this, even though this is kind of from the on top of the pyramid, it's actually very, very valuable, because then a lot of nice things trickle down. So that's, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if this has been focused enough, but just sharing, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Is there a place where we can see some of the work that you're describing?
Yeah, so I mean, sadly, I haven't put all this together because I've been so busy, you know, juggling so many things. But my aim is to hopefully this year make time slowly and put the work out, so that people can actually begin to see that, oh, this comes from here, and this is where they dye their own yarn, and in this village they actually grow it, because some places the supply chains are broken, and while doing this exercise we end up rebuilding some of them, you know, to locally find the closest place to source the, you know, and then like nice relationships begin to reconstruct of like weavers and embroiderers and dyers, and you know, like little things begin to happen organically, and sometimes in very well funded, very well elucidated projects, which are, you know, where everything is spelled out, these kinds of little things get lost.
Yes, and the nuance of it is not necessarily apparent to people who are not within the world of making or creativity or design or art.
Yeah.
So the kind of that line between who's making it or who's designing it is less important to many people who bring solely commercial interest to it. But yeah, as a lab, we've been really interested in finding more artisan-led, artisan-initiated initiatives. We haven't found them.
I would love to.
Sometimes, yeah, we'd love to hear more and learn more.
I mean, they would be so happy to connect and, you know, share, because there's some very lovely work happening
Yeah,
quietly.
that sounds amazing.
And also, I'm sorry, I'm saying one more thing about this idea of being a facilitator as opposed to, I mean, even facilitator is not really the word, more like a co-creation space. Needs to be articulated somehow.
What do you mean?
What I mean is that in India, typically someone like me who has a design label would essentially develop a collection and produce it for my own studio or my own label, where I design the product and they get a design and they do the embroidery, and, you know, that's that. And the next season, one move on to somebody else. But then there's no long-term relationship, or there is no follow-up or whatever. And then you haven't enabled, you've kind of just put in a little bit of economic benefit into the system. Whereas this methodology, which is happening organically in my life, I feel it sort of becomes, it's like you get in and then you get out. And then even 2 years later, when you go back for a project, you see how things have trickled down and something has shifted, and new, you know, new ways have been found which have stayed. Because you also are very, I mean, in my case, I would be very open to saying that this now belongs to you. Whatever we have done, you know. And there are many different markets that they may go to. They may go to like a local market, to like a city, or they may have export buyers. But then all the activity that happens through designing this collection together, I learn a lot and they learn a lot, and then things keep shifting. Yeah.
Yeah, and wanted to read out Jackie's comment also for people watching the recording, that this is a good way to determine a difference between designer artisans and those who are skilled makers. So that just even also not saying, really unpacking all of the various roles that a particular artisan may have within their work. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. Perhaps at a future Laura, we can have you show us some of the work. I really am craving to see what you're describing. It sounds very inspiring. Valentina, did you want to end on your thing about the responsibilities of governments?
Well,
I don't want to save it for a future one.
Yeah, maybe, because we have like only 4 minutes, and I don't know like how easy of an answer is that. We probably don't have the answer. I don't think we do. I don't know if there is any, like, anyone knows any example of like government initiatives around like educating financially or empowering immigrants or artisans communities, place artisans communities financially in cities. I don't know if you guys know initiatives, but I'm curious to dip deeper in that. So if like anyone knows, like, I'm happy to review it for a future Laura, and then like I can share what I learned.
There are, Valentina, you may be aware of them already, but I know in Chicago there are a few groups that are working with refugees that have come in, and very specifically to help bring about markets that they can access with the various skills that they're bringing with them from different places around the world. I can't remember the names of them off the top of my head, but I'll see what I can think. I'll see what I can come, but it might at least give a stepping stone if you don't know them already. Yeah.
I don't, so like, yeah, I will try to see if I can find it, but just like Googling quickly. But if you happen to remember the name, I can put my email in
Great.
on the chat.
And-
Thank you so much.
Christian, you had your hand raised?
I think I understood you were working in Colombia or not necessarily?
So I'm looking, before joining Parsons, I actually was an entrepreneur. I'm from Colombia, and I used to work with, indigenous communities in the city of Medellin, especially with displaced women in the city. So they were coming from like different places around Colombia, especially Chocó and Risaralda, but they didn't have, like, they were in a house in the city of Medellin. They didn't have like a house, and they were like living like either in temporary houses, or they were living just paying by the night. The majority of them were just like finding a place to stay for the night, like not just for them, but for the entire family. So that meant that like 5 kids were like just going to sleep in like inquilinatos. There's like basically it's not even a hotel, it's like a room that they rent and only the adult paid, but oftentimes like there is like 20 people sleeping in the same room, and that was the kind of communities I was working with.
I just share a couple of links because I think the economic inclusion or financial inclusion of refugees or migrants can be seen different if we are seeing it from Colombia or if we are seeing it from New York. Because in Colombia, that we have this wave of Venezuelans or people from Venezuela that is relatively new. So when we talk about migrants in Colombia, we are just assuming that is people from Venezuela. But in New York, there are also a lot of financial inclusion programs for migrants, but what I have seen is they are like specialized in, for instance, by gender or by country or by age. So depending on what you are looking for, I think the approach will be different. I think there is also well, this is my concern. I'm not sure if it's relevant for your research, but sometimes financial inclusion just assume that the relationship that the people has with the money is the same one as everyone. So when the it's different when you see the money in a different way if you grow up in a farm in the middle of the mountains, and it's different relationship with the money when you see it when you grow up in New York from I don't know, a wealthy family, when you are always using a card. So even the device is different. Some people use coins, or they use bills, or they're just, even nowadays people just doesn't have a card because they have the cell phone. So the relationship with the money as a concept, but the relationship with the materiality of it also change a lot depending on who you're talking or who are you interested with. So that could be interesting to look for.
Yeah.
And sorry to interrupt you, but there was a big startup that was launched in Colombia to facilitate financial inclusion for migrants, but using crypto assets, crypto money. And they spent like $2 million in Colombia, and nothing happened, and they just went around a business and nobody cares. But so which money are we talking about? So we assume when we're talking financial inclusion, we're talking about one money, but there are like several ones.
Yeah, totally. So I'm actually, for my thesis project, I'm researching a different topic. It's like immigrants in the US, especially like low-income immigrants. And yeah, it doesn't need to do, and it doesn't have to do specifically with the artisan sector. But yeah, prior to Parsons, I was like working with like displaced communities.
Okay.
I kind of like merged the two things, like the artisan sector and like my topic. And like my question is like, how can government support at a like local level or like national level and an international level immigrants and displaced communities that are artisans? So yeah.
There is MasterCard has a lab that is called Financial Inclusion Lab. Maybe you could, but that could be interesting. Sure.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. I know we are like way past the time, so thank you all for being here and for.
Thank you. Very interesting talk.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. See you next month.
Thank you,
Good luck with
Jacqueline.
the end of semester for students.